Everything the Pittsburgh Steelers did during this draft tells you one thing very clearly. This organization believes it finally found the perfect complementary weapon for this offense, and Jeremy Bernard may end up becoming one of the biggest steals of the entire 2026 NFL draft. The more you break down what Pittsburgh wanted offensively, the more obvious it becomes why they were so excited to bring him to the Steel City. This was not just another depth selection. This was a calculated move to completely reshape the identity of the passing attack moving forward. What stands out immediately with Jeremy Bernard is how complete his game already looks before even playing a single NFL snap. At 6'1" and 206 pounds, he already has an NFL-ready frame. He is not one of those undersized receivers that needs 2 years in an NFL weight room before contributing. He already looks physically prepared for professional football, and even though some people questioned his speed during the draft process, he answered that at the NFL Combine with a 4.48 40-yard dash. That may not put him in the category of a pure burner, but the important part is that his game was never built around straight line speed anyway. The reason Bernard became such an attractive option for Pittsburgh is because of what happens after he gets the football in his hands. His run after catch ability may honestly become one of the most dangerous weapons in this entire offense very quickly, and what makes it even more impressive is that it is not based on elite athleticism alone. His vision, balance, body control, and awareness are what separate him from a lot of young receivers entering the league. He understands angles, he understands leverage, he understands where defenders are coming from before they even arrive. That is a rare instinctive quality for a rookie receiver. There are moments on film where Bernard almost looks more like a running back once the ball is in his hands. He sets up blockers naturally, he feels where space is opening, he slips through traffic with incredible balance, and suddenly, a short 5-yard completion turns into a massive gain. That is exactly the kind of receiver this Steelers offense desperately needed. Someone who can create offense without needing a perfect deep throw every single drive. And this is where things become even more interesting for Pittsburgh moving forward, because Bernard's skill set feels tailor-made for what this offense wants to become under Mike McCarthy. His ability to become an immediate outlet weapon changes everything for the quarterback position. Quick throws, screens, slants, option routes, motion packages. Bernard can become the easy button in this offense immediately. If defenses play soft coverage, Pittsburgh can feed him underneath all game long and let him create chaos after the catch. But maybe the most important detail of all is the fact that Bernard already runs routes like a professional veteran. That matters more than people realize. Young receivers usually struggle entering the NFL because route timing at the professional level is completely different from college football. NFL quarterbacks expect precision. They expect receivers to break at exact moments within the progression. They expect consistency. Bernard already shows a surprisingly advanced understanding of route tempo and spacing, and that is a huge reason why many people inside football circles believe he could earn trust extremely quickly. That becomes even more important when you look at the rest of this Steelers receiver room. Pittsburgh now has a group filled with versatility. DK Metcalf brings the size and vertical explosiveness defenses fear every snap. Michael Pittman Jr. gives them physicality, toughness, and reliability. Now Bernard enters the picture as the movement weapon who can attack underneath coverage, play outside, line up in the slot, and even shift into the backfield in certain packages. That versatility may become the real story here. The Steelers are suddenly building a receiver room where everybody can move around the formation. Bernard can play inside or outside. Pittman can shift into the slot. DK can dominate on the perimeter while still being moved around strategically. Defenses are going to have a much harder time identifying matchups before the snap because Pittsburgh finally has receivers capable of playing multiple roles instead of being locked into one position. And another thing that should excite Steelers fans is Bernard's reliability. This is a player with extremely dependable hands. If the football is placed anywhere near him, chances are he is bringing it in cleanly. That may sound simple, but for a rookie trying to build chemistry quickly, that trust factor becomes massive. Quarterbacks love receivers who eliminate uncertainty. Bernard projects as exactly that kind of player. Then there is the personality side of this selection, which honestly may have mattered more to Pittsburgh than people realize. Everything coming out of Alabama describes Bernard as a hard worker, a high-character teammate, and somebody completely committed to his craft. After years of dealing with personality concerns and inconsistency at the receiver position, the Steelers clearly wanted stability and professionalism added to this room. Bernard reportedly checks every single one of those boxes. What also makes this selection fascinating is how balanced Bernard's overall profile is. He may not have one singular elite trait like some first-round receivers, but there are very few weaknesses in his game. He is polished, he is dependable, he is versatile, he understands football at a high level. Those players tend to contribute faster than expected once they reach the NFL. The Steelers clearly believe Bernard can become an immediate contributor from day one, possibly even locking down the WR3 role immediately entering training camp. Roman Wilson is still expected to have a role in the offense, especially as a rotational slot weapon, but Bernard's complete skill set gives him a very real chance to climb the depth chart quickly, and honestly, the more you look at this offense, the more dangerous it starts to feel on paper. Pittsburgh may not have landed every target they originally wanted during the draft, but somehow they still walked away with a receiver who fits almost perfectly with what this offense is trying to build long term. Bernard may never become a pure number one superstar receiver, but if he develops into the type of high-end number two weapon many scouts believe he can become, the Steelers may have quietly secured one of the smartest selections of the entire draft. Now the biggest question becomes this: if Jeremy Bernard develops the way Pittsburgh believes he will, could this finally become the most complete wide receiver trio the Steelers have had in years? Because when you really start projecting this offense into the future, it becomes obvious why there is so much excitement around Jeremy Bernard internally. The Steelers are not asking him to carry the offense immediately. They are placing him into a situation where every piece around him actually helps maximize his strengths. That is a huge advantage for a rookie receiver entering the NFL. DK Metcalf is still going to command massive attention from opposing defenses every single week because of his size and speed combination. Defensive coordinators simply cannot ignore him on the outside. Michael Pittman Jr. brings another physical presence that forces corners to play with toughness and discipline underneath. And while defenses focus on those bigger perimeter threats, Bernard suddenly becomes the player attacking soft zones, exploiting mismatches in space, and punishing defenses after the catch. That combination could become incredibly difficult to defend if everything develops the way Pittsburgh hopes. And one detail that keeps showing up when people evaluate Bernard is how mature his football IQ already looks for a rookie. You can tell he understands how to manipulate defenders during routes instead of simply running patterns mechanically. There is patience to his game, there is timing, there is awareness. Those are usually traits you see from receivers after multiple NFL seasons, not from somebody entering the league for the very first time. That is why many believe he could become an immediate favorite target in critical situations, third downs, red zone concepts, quick rhythm throws. Bernard feels like the type of receiver quarterbacks begin trusting very quickly because he consistently does the small things correctly. He understands spacing, he sits in open windows, he gives the quarterback clean throwing lanes. Coaches love that. Quarterbacks love that even more. Another important factor here is how creative the Steelers can now become offensively. Pittsburgh suddenly has far more flexibility than they had last season. Bernard is not locked into one role. They can use motion to create confusion before the snap. They can move him into stacked formations. They can line him up in the backfield. They can isolate him against linebackers or nickel corners underneath. The offense becomes harder to predict because Bernard can function in so many different areas of the field. And honestly, this may end up being one of the smartest aspects of the entire draft strategy. Pittsburgh did not necessarily chase the flashiest receiver available. They targeted fit. They targeted reliability. They targeted versatility. And in today's NFL, receivers who can adapt to multiple responsibilities become incredibly valuable. You also have to remember that Bernard enters a locker room where expectations are already very high. This fan base wants immediate results. The pressure in Pittsburgh is always intense, especially for offensive players expected to contribute early. But based on everything people say about Bernard's mentality, he seems built for that environment. Coaches at Alabama consistently described him as a worker, somebody who approaches preparation seriously, somebody who embraces coaching instead of resisting it. That matters because rookies usually hit adversity at some point during their first NFL season. Defenses become more physical, coverages become more complex, the speed of the game changes dramatically. The players who survive are usually the ones willing to adapt quickly and continue learning. Bernard's mentality gives him a real chance to handle that transition successfully, and if we are being honest, Steelers fans should probably be extremely encouraged by the type of player comparison many evaluators continue mentioning with Bernard. His overall game has drawn comparisons to Adam Thielen, and when you look deeper into the details, it actually makes a lot of sense. Thielen was never considered the fastest receiver in football. He was never the most physically dominant athlete on the field, but his reliability, route running, awareness, and consistency made him one of the most productive receivers in the league for years. If Bernard reaches even close to that level of production, Pittsburgh may have landed an absolute steal in the second round. What also stands out is how perfectly his timeline aligns with the rest of this offensive core. Bernard, Metcalf, and Pittman are all expected to remain together for the foreseeable future. That gives Pittsburgh a rare opportunity to build long-term chemistry within the offense, instead of constantly resetting the receiver room every offseason. Continuity matters, timing matters, trust matters, and the Steelers may finally be building a stable foundation at wide receiver again. At the same time, expectations need to stay realistic. Bernard is still a rookie. There will be moments where NFL corners challenge him physically. There will be games where separation downfield becomes difficult because he is not an elite vertical burner. That remains one of the few limitations in his profile. He wins more with technique, intelligence, and body control than with pure explosive speed. But honestly, Pittsburgh already has the vertical element covered with DK Metcalf. Bernard does not need to become that player. What the Steelers need from him is efficiency, consistency, and production in the short and intermediate areas of the field. And based on his college profile, there is every reason to believe he can deliver exactly that. The scary part for opposing defenses is that Bernard may actually become more dangerous as the season progresses. Rookie receivers who already understand route nuance and timing tend to improve rapidly once they gain confidence. Once the game slows down mentally, their natural instincts begin taking over. If Bernard reaches that point midway through the season, Pittsburgh's offense could look very different by the end of the year compared to what people are expecting right now. And maybe the biggest storyline of all is this: the Steelers may have quietly rebuilt one of the most balanced receiver groups in football without needing a top 5 draft pick to do it. Metcalf gives them explosiveness. Pittman gives them toughness. Bernard gives them versatility and efficiency. Suddenly, this offense has answers for multiple defensive looks instead of relying on one style of attack. That is why there is real belief inside Pittsburgh that Jeremy Bernard could become far more